Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Live with Littledata. I'm Edward from Littledata, and I'm joined today by Joe from OneBone. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks.
Now, great to have OneBone as a customer. Tell us a little bit more about the brand, how it started, and what you guys do.
Of course. So OneBone is an apparel brand, and our focus is on better fitting style for everybody. So basically what that really comes down to is we design and we make and manufacture apparel that looks and feels and fits better for the hard to fit man. And we've got a lot of experience in the industry making clothing for, the harder to fit individual. Our background is in wholesale clothing that we used to sell to some of the bigger box retailers. And now, that kind of dovetailed into a D2C brand about 6 years ago that focuses on the hard to fit men's side of the clothing industry. And we started with basically the humble t-shirt about 6 years ago, as many D2C ecom brands have done, whether it's, shirts or socks or underwear, what have you. But we started with the t-shirt, and we've slowly been kind of building out our line ever since then, with that ethos, at the core of every product, which is, making things that fit well and look good for someone who is traditionally harder to fit.
Yeah. So you say not just the sort of big and tall category, but just generally people who are kind of outsized normal sizing.
Exactly. So our size range goes all the way from small to 8XL. And we actually kind of rewrote the sizing grading scale, and we don't conform to like XL, XXL, so on and so forth. We rewrote it in terms of numbers, and we go from a -3, which is a small, all the way to a size 7, which maps to an 8XL. And we've got customers in every kind of slice of that pie.
Yeah, great. One of my favourite, there was a store in London I always remember cycling past, which was High and Mighty, which I always thought was a good take on the big and tall.
Right, yeah.
Great. And as you say, so you guys are a purely D2C brand, and so I imagine, it's one of those things where when people discover the products and they discover the fit, they're pretty sticky customers, right? They're hard. They find it hard to find the same kind of clothing elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely have a lot of heavy lifting up front in terms of earning their trust and getting them to believe that we actually do have clothing that fits them. But once they do get that first OneBone product, whatever they choose to start with, but typically it is the t-shirt, from the moment they start to put it on, as a harder to fit individual, you kind of know as you're trying on a piece of clothing, whether or not it's going to fit. And they know instantly that it does. And then, they see it, they feel it, they look in the mirror. And from that point on, they typically feel a sense of comfort and confidence that they haven't felt when trying on clothing and wearing clothing. And that really helps us be sticky for them. And we've had the privilege of kind of, I wouldn't say relying on that, but benefiting from that for the past 6 years.
Great. So to that point, I guess retention marketing is hugely important for you, because you've got this customer base who's bought into the concepts and the sizing, and you can launch new products for. So you're using kind of Klaviyo to do a lot of that. Tell us a little bit about how, I guess, what are the sort of main ways you're using Klaviyo, some of the kind of main tactics you're using for talking to that email list?
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, we have our standard flows from our welcome series to our abandonment series. And that's typically how we've been using Klaviyo, obviously for our campaigns as well. But from a flows perspective, we have our standard flows across the board. And we always think about our flows in terms of whether or not someone is a new customer or a returning customer. And we have different messaging, and we want to have a different conversation with people based on that. So that's kind of how we break out all of our flow structures. And when it comes to our abandonment series in particular, the way we speak to a new customer who has made it all the way to checkout versus a returning customer who has made it to that point, we definitely try to speak to them differently and make sure they're aware of and understand different things about the brand accordingly.
And so what's the offer for a new customer who's kind of unsure about the brand? I mean, how do you get them over the line for that first purchase?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We have this program called the First One on Us program. That's kind of like our internal name for it. And, basically we know that we're dealing with an audience who has been burned many, many times before by false promises. And they've been told that, this brand will fit. And then they buy it, they try it. Either they go to the mall, they go through every store at the mall, or they order online and they wait a few days and get some product, and lo and behold, it doesn't fit. And the promises that were made to them up front are not what were delivered on when they get the product in their hand.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with that, and we're combating that all the time. So it is hard for us to kind of earn that trust from a new customer that hasn't given us a shot yet. And also, our core audience is someone who's basically about 30 to 45 years old, is like our core demographic. So these people have had this problem for a long time, and they've been served up false promises for a long time. So that's
right.
the kind of ethos and genesis of the First One on Us program, because it's better for us and for them to just give them a shirt, let them try it, see how they feel with it. And we know more times than not that they are going to love it and they are going to come back pretty quick. And so that's the nature of the program. It's very much, we believe in our product this much that, we're willing to give you the first one on the house. And that's a pretty hard offer to kind of refuse. So that does a good job of bringing some new people in the door. And then, like we discussed about retention, it kind of, it goes from there.
Excellent. So there's quite a sort of high hurdle to get people over that sort of fear, fear that they're going to get cheated again. They're going to, they're going to find something that just is average and doesn't feel great.
Exactly.
But you get them over that, and then you have a loyal customer, so it's worth giving away a certain amount of product to do that, or a t-shirt to
exactly.
do that. Yeah. Great. So you started working with Littledata, I think a couple of months ago. Tell us kind of how did you find out about Littledata, and what, why did you choose us versus other tech for helping increase the audience?
Yeah. So my personal background is in ecom consulting, and typically in like the kind of mid-market and enterprise market space. So I've been very familiar and aware of server-side event tracking for a long time. Coming to OneBone, we're kind of in the emerging brand space, and something like server-side event tracking was not necessarily on my radar, because I know that we haven't really grown into that need yet to derive the ROI that we would get from it. But as soon as I found out about you guys, from the brand name down to my first touch point with you guys, it became clear that you guys were making this accessible to folks like us. So that's kind of how I found out about you. I have a set of tabs open in my browser at all times for just kind of like research and new stuff that may be coming down the pipe in our tech stack. And so this has been on my radar, and you guys kind of forced the subject for us earlier than we otherwise might have, and we're very glad that has happened.
Yeah, and I think it's really great to hear that, because I think that's part of our product philosophy, is trying to make it ridiculously easy to get accurate data. There are lots of brands out there, bigger brands that invest a lot of effort, many months of developer time and analyst time trying to get the stuff right, and using sort of Google Tag Manager and other tools. But I guess what we're trying to do is distill all of that. And we used to do that, actually. That was the genesis of Littledata. We used to be consultants and do this for bigger brands. And really, what we're trying to do is productize that and make it very easy for anyone, and at a very accessible price point, to just plug and play, turn it on, and then go into Klaviyo and just see the enhanced audiences and the results. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's a good segue into talking about the results. So you got Littledata set up in a few hours. What was the sort of how long did it take to see results, and what did you see?
I'll go just one step earlier to kind of our onboarding. I found out about you guys on a Friday morning, and by Friday afternoon, you guys had me up and running. And I spoke to 3 people within the company in that time frame, which to me was just impressive. How much you guys made yourselves available across the organization, and I know we were dealing with different time zones too. So even more logistically impressive. I think we were finally set up finally by like 3 p.m. that day. And I was monitoring over the weekend, like our Littledata flows versus our traditional flow. And I was looking at the incremental revenue all weekend, just kind of like awestruck at like how easy this was to get up and running and how quickly the results were there. We think about every addition to our tech stack in terms of like proving out the ROI very quickly with low-hanging fruit, and then expanding that kind of partner, product, service, what have you, into our business more and more. And within the first weekend, it became clear that this was going to be a staple of our tech stack, and just due to the results. And we were seeing the Littledata flows that kind of matched the traditional flows, call it the abandonment ones. They were matching them in terms of revenue and in terms of success. So it became clear instantly, and that just has continued since that point in time.
And I guess be clear about that when you say matching, when this was on top of this, all incremental on what you already had running.
Exactly, yeah. So basically
doubling your revenue from those same tactics, those same flows.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for those who don't use Littledata integration, I mean, the simple answer is that we're basically being able to join the dots. So there's this sort of, think about it as this pool of people who you were already retargeting with like an abandoned cart or abandoned checkout flow. You already knew they were abandoned checkout and they're on your radar. But there's this sort of, let's say, a wide audience around. Think of it as an extended circle of people who were also on your email list and were also abandoning cart and abandoned checkout, but you just didn't identify them before. And so with enhanced sort of identity resolution, what we can do is allow you to send emails to those people. And often because those people are by definition less targeted, less emailed, the actual revenue per email is higher, because you're kind of, these people are actually they're not the sort of what I would call low quality audience. They're if anything a high quality audience. They're the same people, the same buying intent. They were just harder to sort of track down.
So that was the part that took me most by surprise, because at first I was like, okay, yeah, I know how this typically goes. I know what the big server-side event tracking guys do. And basically, we're just going to dilute our performance. So we'll cast a wider net, but we'll dilute our performance. And then the opposite happened here, which really took me by surprise. And as I was speaking to your guys' team, like, in addition to the white glove onboarding, you guys were very clearly very knowledgeable in your space, and you were educating and providing value in that way, and helping me understand why that was happening and why our revenue per recipient was actually higher than our traditional revenue per recipient in those flows. That was just a cherry on top. Yeah,
good. Yeah, we have a great team, and I'm proud of the fact that, as I said, we do one thing, we do it well, and I think that's one of the messages. Yeah, we compete in a space where other people are trying to do like lots of different things, sort of half-baked, and what we want to be is the experts and just doing this one thing really well.
It's
I
great.
think about best sales brands, like there are lots of, being good at data is not one. It's not one one category. Lots of aspects. Cool. And so what kind of, just talk to the results. I mean, what did you see over a month of using Littledata in terms of improved, it's both on the abandoned cart and abandoned checkout audiences, right?
Yeah, so it was those two right out of the block. So basically, we doubled our abandoned checkout revenue just by virtue of having that Littledata integration and flow. And the revenue per recipient was also much higher, which just the downstream effects of that are tremendous. That has other impacts on the overall health of our Klaviyo account, of our
Yeah.
deliverability, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So like those are really the results. And the best part about it is this was just the first thing that we did to start driving incremental revenue with Littledata to prove it out. But we're just scratching the surface. I mean, the fact that you guys have made server-side event tracking accessible to a brand of our size, we have a lot of ideas and aspirations about how we want to, provide very unique and personalized customer journeys to people. And as we are hard to fit, there are a lot of hard to fit looks different for different people, and we want to match that from an experience perspective and
Right.
underpinning everything we do with better event tracking and understanding who is coming through our store. You guys are able to do that or help us do that, which is I can't wait to do more.
And so what are some of the other things you can go further? Is it about segmenting based on product category or demographic, or like what is it you think would be the potential optimizations for the current flows?
Yeah, good question. So definitely by demographic, so I guess by persona type would be the big one. We have a lot of customers of people who shop for their significant others. So understanding who they are and speaking to them accordingly, rather than having very you focused messaging, having very for your significant other focused messaging will be incredible. And also kind of understanding at the different stages of the journey and where they are on our kind of customer path from homepage to collection page, product page, so on and so forth. Providing the appropriate messaging and programs and exposing the appropriate programs to them based on who they are. So that's part of what I see as like one of the things that Littledata will be able to help us with a lot. And we're pumped.
It reminds me of a funny conversation. So going back about 5 years, we had a product that was about more about kind of benchmarking and showing people kind of from their customer audience breaking down sort of who were the best sort of customer personas of buying intent. And we had this fishing brand, right, that was selling like a high-end fishing kit. And we said, actually, the people with the highest, the people who are most likely to convert on your site are female. And they said that just can't be true. Like that goes against all what we think. We only sell to men. It's like, but you've forgotten that women buy men presents. I mean, they're on your site and they've got cash to spend. And the problem is your messaging is entirely about male, like, you want to buy this, but there are other people, say significant others that are actually on the store, and they probably are not. They're much more like buy ready. That they need to buy a Christmas present or whatever, and they want to get in there and spend the cash.
Exactly, especially when it comes to us. So I don't know if I gave the number before, but like about 30% of our customers are significant others, and in our case, women. And it's men don't like shopping for clothes. It's not something we traditionally like to do. And this really, being able to speak to them in a way that makes more sense will be tremendous.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. I think going back to something you're saying about the kind of quality audience and the effect of that on the overall list deliverability. I mean, that's a point that shouldn't be understated. And it was something we were talking about last week with one of our agency partners, Mac and Monster, on this podcast, because what happens with some of the other tech out there that claims to sort of bring more people to win back to your abandoned cart flows is they're basically what I would call sort of skimming the barrel of, like, these are people who never consented to opt into email lists. They didn't actually want to be tracked in the first place, and the inevitable effect of that is that you have a higher spam rate, and so effectively, yes, you might be increasing your one flow like 5% of your purchasing via Klaviyo by adding this audience from Wonderkind or other people doing this stuff, but the problem is it's killing the deliverability on 95% of your list. That's all those new product launches and stuff. So as a brand, what you've got to do is protect that. Your ultimate number one tactic here is just being able to tell your current customer base about new product launches. And if you're using tech that is eroding your deliverability across your whole list, that is a terrible cost to pay.
Exactly. It's this short-term gain
Yeah.
for long-term pain,
Yeah.
which is the inverse of what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And
And it's very hard to get back that. Once your email domain gets on spam lists and stuff, it's very hard to basically recover that deliverability.
and I would add to that, those types of products out there they're not focused on that for you, and they're not worried about that, and they may not even be raising that flag for you.
No.
So it's kind of like a buyer beware situation from a merchant perspective, because unless you that's the other thing. So it really comes down to the people. Like when we started working with you guys and we saw how knowledgeable you were and how honest you were, we just felt there was a match in our kind of vibe and ethos when it comes to like how we do business and how we conduct ourselves. And feeling that sense of confidence. And we're fortunate enough to be aware of those blind spots, but not everyone is, especially in this emerging market space. So
there's a huge amount of snake oil out there, unfortunately. And I think
sadly,
what's sad is that, I guess you say, in a way, Littledata was one of the companies to pioneer server-side tracking for Shopify, and we've kind of got the message out there that, as you say, that is a good thing. But obviously, there's lots of people who are now waving that flag of first-party data, server-side data is great. But obviously, there's a difference between the real thing and
doing it right,
and the substitute. So
for sure.
That's awesome. So yeah, it's great to hear that it's all working well for Klaviyo. We didn't really talk a bit more about your other kind of acquisition channels. What are your other kind of main spend in terms of kind of top of funnel marketing?
We do a lot of work in the Facebook, Instagram, and social space, and so that's where the bulk of our ad spend goes. We also do a lot of organic content as well, and I think we're really kind of like a true new age D2C brand in that kind of way. Like we're community driven. The community proliferates itself. When someone tries our brand, they want to tell other people about our brand. They want to spread the love. So I think the mix of Meta, some Google, and a lot of UGC that we get from our community and organic content from us, and just talking to the community. In addition to more and more in-person activations that we've started to do in the past couple of years, we've done some pop-up shops. We go to events, things like that. I think those kind of dominate our acquisition channels for sure.
Great. So hopefully there's an opportunity to help you a little bit more with Google Ads and Meta Ads in terms of targeting there, because I think that's also our product vision is to be able to bring the same level of, but both. And with Google and Meta, the challenge is actually just about sending a better purchasing signal. Not necessarily. It is partly about the retargeting opportunities in terms of winning back people who maybe browsed and added to cart but didn't purchase. That's definitely a use, but I think there's also just basically the kind of prospecting use where you need to get, if you can better feed in the intent signal, the actual who's purchasing to these platforms, and you do that via their, well, what Meta calls their conversions API and Google calls their some enhanced conversions, then obviously you can get a better uplift on your return on ad spend. And I think that's one of the things we're really focused on the next couple of months, is just proving out the benefit there. With the good thing about Klaviyo is it's really easy for people to see the uplift. Like they can just go into their Klaviyo account, they can see it's this flow that's doing $1,000, this other flow is doing $1,000. So great, doubled my revenue. With Meta particularly, there is a big uplift, but it's much harder to show because you can't do that side by side comparison thing.
Well, we will see it downstream, which is the nice thing, and so but that is definitely, we think of our funnel very holistically, and we want to make sure that every stage is properly kind of taken care of, and that we're not diluting our efforts. And as you kind of try to turn up the crank and scale, well, we want to make sure that we do that efficiently. And what you're talking about, it sounds like will be really helpful there. So that'll be great.
Indeed. We'll be in touch about that. Good. Well, I think that's all we had time for today. Thank you very much for coming live stream. It's been fascinating to learn more about OneBone, and I hope we continue to be able to show you brilliant results and win back more customers to your great product.
Likewise, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe.
Take care.
Bye.